Good morning, I'm Aled Nicholas. I'm a senior consultant in the Geocortex team here at One Spatial. And today we're going to have a look at Geocortex Analytics. We'll have some time at the end for any questions you might have, but also if you've got any questions as we're going through, feel free to ask them and I'll see if I can get to them as we go along. So I'm expecting this to take around the 40 minutes mark. So we'll see how we get on with that. For the agenda for today, so we're going to have a look at an overview of Geocortex Analytics. We're going to have a look at some examples. Then we're going to look at some of the differences between Geocortex Analytics and some of the software that's already out there that does monitoring work. We'll run through a demo and then I'll point you in the direction of any additional resources if you want to know any more about analytics or any other Geocortex products. So before we go into it in detail, first thing to think of is, have you ever found yourself saying, how can I be alerted when my services or applications go down? So with Geocortex Analytics, we can configure alarms that will alert specified users, specified email addresses, text messages when this alarm is triggered. We'll have a look at that as we go through. You might also wonder what your users are doing in your applications. Are they using it the way it's supposed to be used? Which tools are the most popular? How long do they stay in the application? When they're in there, what are they searching for? And all those kind of questions can lead you to an answer of whether your app can be improved or not. You also might want to view trends on how your servers, services, and applications are performing. So is there any particular layers in your map services that are slow? Are your applications giving long response times? Is there any time of day that your services are particularly slow? All this kind of information can be gathered from analytics. And taking all those points into account, you can then create applications which are more focused and they are then performing better, performing to the best they possibly can to help you justify your return on investment. So with all that in mind, Geocortex Analytics, it allows you to monitor your GIS health, view historical trends, and gain insight on user activity to maximize your return on investment. So how do we do that? So we can visualize historical trends, so we can see how your GIS is being used and how it's performing over time. You can then maximize your user's productivity. So if we can identify problems before the user realizes there's a problem, so if your application is down, if your map service is down, and we can get in there quickly, fix it before anybody realizes an issue, that then enhances your user's experience. So we can keep our apps running optimally as well. So we can monitor our resources to ensure they're running at peak performance. Is our local disk drive starting to get full? Do we need to empty that before it becomes an issue? And that then allows us to stay on top of issues. We can create customized alerts. So we'll have a look at this in more detail, but we can create error warnings and essentially alerts. So something that can tell you something is about to happen before it actually happens, which will then allow you to go in and amend any issues before it becomes something that affects your end users. We can gain more insight by monitoring every component within your GIS. So this is not just something that will monitor your Arcgis Server or your Geocortex apps or your portal for Arcgis. This includes your servers that these are installed on, your portals, your apps, your databases, your web servers, your whole GIS infrastructure. And we can also quickly identify inefficiencies. So by doing this, we can configure dashboards that get all the relevant information that you want to see straight on your front page for you. So by the information you want to see, this could be you as an IT admin, it could be you as a GIS admin, it could be you as a GIS user, it could be you as a manager trying to get information to reports. So looking at some examples. So this is an alarm we've got set up on an actual server. So if we see the down the left, we've got a menu that is listing all the resources that are configured within Geocortex Analytics. So we've got a CPU alarm set there. So you can see that the current usage alarm for the CPU is at 65%. We've set an alarm to go off when it gets to 80%. And we can see below, we've got number of occurrences, and that's in 24 hours. So if the CPU usage alarm goes over 80%, 3 times in 24 hours, an alarm will be raised. And that will either be an alarm which is visible in your Geocortex Analytics summary page, or if you've configured it to do so, send an email or a text alert to relevant people. All this is configurable. So you could say you want it to be at 70%. You could say after just 1 occurrence, or many more than 3 occurrences. So here we're looking at service usage and performance for our Arcgis server. So we got a list of map services, and we can see the number of total requests set against them. We can see the number of unique users who've accessed them, response times, cumulative processing times, lots of really useful information to see how our map services are being used. We can look at process usage. So we've got processor times and memory, and we can see how the map services are performing against that. So we're just running through some quick examples now. We'll have a look at this in more detail when we look at the demo. Layer performance. So we've got response times for each layers. So we got it going average response times over an hour. So we can see that just by looking at this, there's a few layers in this map service which are taking far longer than the other layers in their response times. Is that expected? Is there a reason for that? Or is that an issue we need to look into? We can have a look at a list of users who've used apps. So in this case, we're looking at a list of users who've used a web app builder application that we've created. So we can see whether they're new users, how many sessions they've had. We can also look at stuff like their average session duration. Stuff like that can be used to look at if people are opening up an app and immediately going out. Have they opened up the wrong app? Do we need to look at how that particular app is marketed? Is it doing what it's meant to be doing? If you're familiar with Geocortex Essentials, you'll know that you can create Geocortex Essentials sites, and within them sites, you can have things such as workflows and reports, print templates. We can see how often those workflows or those tools are being used, and we can break down the percentage that are being used. So we can see from this example here, the blue segment, this workflow is not being used a huge amount. Does that need, is it needed? Does that need to be in this application? Should it maybe be on a different viewer? Could it be combined into another workflow? We can take this kind of information and essentially make our apps run far more optimally. So we can configure resources and alarms. This is something we'll have a look at in more detail, but just to quickly have a look at it, we can see that we can set alarms against our portals. There are a number of pre-configured alarms, and we can set it up to even run scripts. So we can say, if this alarm is triggered, run a script. I'll go into that in a bit more detail, but you can start to think about how that information can be used to really enhance how your alarms are run. So if you send, essentially, if an alarm is triggered saying this map service isn't running, you might want to get a script together to say restart that map service, something along them lines. And we can see that we can add email recipients and SMS recipients. We can then look at current alarms. So when we log into analytics, we will have a summary page, and we can see the red alarms are failures, and we can see the orange alarms are warnings. And when we open up one of those alarms, we can then see the resource and see some information about it. So this particular one is a server. It takes us right to that service, and we can see some information relevant to that server. And we can look at historical trends. So we're up in the trends tab now, and we can look at sessions by visitor type. That's one of the things we can look at. We'll look at some other trends shortly too. But even just this, we can see that knowing whether returning users or new users are visiting our applications. I guess it depends on the type of application you've got, but would you be expecting to see the majority of people to be new users? They go in, use the site once, they don't use it again. Or would they be returning users? You know, someone who uses that site on a regular basis. If those trends are what you expect, great. If they're not, why is that? So we can configure dashboards where we can see these panels, and we can add all different panels onto the same page. So we've seen the menu with a list of resources, with a list of servers, Arcgis servers, portals, Geocortex applications. We can go through, add the particular ones we're interested in, and then move them around so that the stuff which is most important to you is the stuff you'll see first. And then finally, we can receive email alerts. We've briefly discussed this, but when an alarm is triggered, we can then email the relevant people about it. So let's look at some of the differences between analytics and ArcGIS Monitor. So analytics is a tool designed to improve end user experiences within your GIS. So what we're looking at there is something that will look at our system health, tell us where it's not so healthy, but we can also look at improving our end user experiences too. It's very easy to navigate. It is very much not designed for just IT admin. GIS admins, GIS users can go in and quite easily navigate around it and set up dashboards and set up alarms, as we will see shortly. So we can see how historical trends identify how our users are interacting with our GIS apps. Not only our GIS, when we're saying our GIS apps, we're not just talking about Arcgis Server, map services, or Geocortex Essential sites. We're talking about web app builder as well as Geocortex apps as well. So I'll just exit the screen quickly and we'll jump straight into a demo. So when we open up Geocortex Analytics, what we will see is your summary page. So summary page has a list of alarms, and as I mentioned, red is failures, orange is warnings. Now, don't be alarmed, pardon the pun, at the number of alarms we have on this page. So this is it's a POC, it's a demo environment. We don't necessarily monitor it regularly, so we would expect to see a number of alarms on here. So this is something that I would expect to see, and it's nothing that worries me. Having said that, if you were logging into your system and you set up alarms which should only be going off when something has failed, then you might look at this and be a little bit concerned. But this is what you see when you log in. So we have our alarms and we have a 48-hour snapshot of our system. So we've got a chart here with triggered alarms over 48 hours. And then we've got a chart at the bottom here with number of sessions accessing our Geocortex applications in that time. So what we'll do is take a look at one of the alarms. What do you see when you open up an alarm? So we'll open LA County Geocortex Essentials site and just take a look at what we see from that. So when we open that up, we can see that it directs you straight to your resource. So this is within Geocortex Essentials. It's within the sandbox instance of Geocortex Essentials, and this is LA County site. And we've got some information about our Geocortex site there. We can see there's 6 workflows and 2 reports, and we can see the size of the site, and we can see when it was last modified. But we can also see that there's 1 critical error and 1 alarm that's been triggered too. So we can see that alarm is an internal server error 500. So what might we do to then go and see what our alarm is telling us? Well, immediately I'd probably open up our Geocortex Essentials site and see what the issue is from there. Instead of doing that though, we'll go back to our summary page and have a look at the map server error. Yeah, so we'll select this hosted hot desk map feature service. So that takes us to the map service, and we can see that within that folder we have 4 map services, 1 that has a critical error, and we have 33 feature services, 4 of which have critical errors. Again, we can go down and have a look at all the services listed. We've got 7 pages worth, and we can see what the errors are for our feature services and map service that's displaying an error. So again, what might we do to troubleshoot that issue? So I would immediately take a look at the REST endpoint for the Arcgis Server. So if we do that, we can see we know it's in the hosted folder, as we can see that these are the services which are throwing us errors. We see there's Culvert, CSV, 4TS, hot desk map, road closure points, Staten Island imagery. So if we have a look in the hosted folder, and we can see that none of them services are listed. So immediately, you know that there's an issue. Maybe the services need to be republished, maybe they're not started, something along them lines. But we've got a good idea of what we need to do to fix those alarms just immediately by looking at a summary page, seeing an alarm and drilling down into it. So the alternative could be you don't know there's an error and you wait for a user to tell you that something's not working when they're trying to open an application that has that map service. So that's the summary tab where we have a look at our alarms and drill down into them and see some potentials of what's causing the alarm. So if we go back to the status tab, so the status gives us an up-to-date picture of our system as it currently is. So we can see that it's given us, so we can see in our resources list, we've got the overall system, and it gives us a list of active alarms immediately. So that's the first thing it's pointing us to. We can see a list of servers which are configured with the system. We can see portals and Arcgis servers, essentials instances, Geocortex applications, databases, and web applications and even websites that are all added, are all configured within analytics. So what we'll do is have a look at one of our servers. So we'll look at prod DMark1. And this immediately gives us some information, some useful information about that server. So we can see what the memory usage on that server is. We see it's 66% full. And we can see how many gigabytes have been used from the C drive. So even if you've not set an alarm, you can have a look at the server and essentially look at the health of it just by seeing some very headline details there. We can see that there are a number of alarms configured against that server, and we got a green tick, so none of these alarms have been triggered. So they're all within the set values that we've given them. So we can see that disk space is at 18%, maximum CPU usage is 32%. Other information, it's all looking good. And then we can see what Arcgis servers are on there as well. So while we're looking at these status tabs, status information, so these here are called our panels, and panels can be minimized or expanded depending on whether you want to see the information that's included on them. And they can all be downloaded as well as a CSV file. If you need to then put this information in the report, you can quite easily just download that information and add it into a CSV file. And we can also add from here to a specific dashboard that we want to look at. We'll have a look at dashboards in more detail shortly, but each panel can be added directly to a dashboard, and each panel can be downloaded to CSV. So what we'll do is take a look at our ArcGIS server. We're going to look at this portal.geocortex.com, and this will look familiar from the alarm that we checked earlier. This is the same server. And we can see the information on there is the same that we looked at previously. And what we'll do is have a look at Geocortex Essentials. And we'll go down in Sandbox, see some of the stats you can get from there. And we'll look at LA County Plus. So you can see the kind of information you can get from looking at your Geocortex Essentials sites here. So we've got LA County Plus. We know it has 14 workflows, 6 reports, 3 print templates. We see last time it was modified. We can see a list of services that it references. So we can see that this World Geocode service is throwing an error. So that's useful information to know to begin with. And we see the rest of them are fine. We can see what resources are being used in the list as well. So if you know Geocortex Essentials, you'll know your XAML files, your workflows, your RPXs, your reports, or your print templates. And that's a quick overview, really, of our status tab. It gives you an up-to-date information of what your system currently is doing. So if we move to Trends tab now. So the first thing you might notice is it opens up on the same resource that we were just looking at. The resource list is the same, so everything listed in status, the resource is there, we can see trends for too. So if we go and have a look at a different Geocortex site, we'll look at LA County Plus in our prod instance. and start to look at some trends from there. So the next thing you might notice is we've got some time constraints we can add to it. So this is looking at this week. We can look at last week. We can look at this month. Or we can add our own date filters into there. So we can see where this sort of information will be useful to, if you've got specific reports you need to add to, you can configure it so that it's, within the reporting period. So from there, we can have a look at how many sessions of this site have been opened. How many of them were unique sessions? Again, as I mentioned previously, is that what we're expecting to see? Or we're expecting near enough all the sessions to be unique sessions, or are they all expected to be return users as well? We can look at the services and the most popular services used within the site. So we can see that this trees service is the most popular used service within the Geocortex site. But we can also just see even useful information like average response times for each service that's being run. So we can see print templates taking quite a while. We can see our reports taking quite a while, and another print templates taking quite a while. That is, for me, I would expect stuff like print templates and reports to take longer than opening a workflow. So that's to be expected, but if it's throwing up response times which look out of the ordinary, you can start to investigate why that is. You can see performance, response times again, to try and head off any issues before they become issues for end users. We can have a look at layer summaries. So which layers are turned on as a default? How many are then toggled off? And vice versa, which are off as default and toggled on. Now that might be useful information because you might actually look at how your site is configured, how your viewer is configured, and think, well, hang on, if everybody's turning that layer off, maybe it's just a hindrance, maybe it's just getting in people's way. We can look at which layers are the slowest. We could see here there's one outlier, this service requests, that is far slower than any of the other layers. Again, is that something we would expect, or is that something we need to look at? Are there too many? Is there too much information in that layer? Do we need to break it down a bit? Individual resource requests, so we can see which resources are being requested in graphical form, and we can amend that by week, day. So that kind of information we can see in our Trends tab for our Geocortex Essentials sites. So we'll take a look at our Arcgis Server now and see what kind of trends we can see from that. Bear with me while this just loads up. So we can see our service usage and performance. So we had a look at that when we had to look at the examples on the slides earlier. So we could see the number of services that within this Arcgis server. We can see how many requests have been made against them. We see the average response times. I mean, we can certainly see that there's a number of differing response times here, particularly looking at geoprocessing services. So is that something you need to be concerned about? Or are you happy to accept a geoprocessing service will take quite a while to respond in comparison to, say, a relatively simple map service? And we can have a look at cumulative processing times as well, and we can see any errors which have been logged against those services. Again, we can look at service usage, and we can look how many requests are set against them, and having that in graph form adds a lot when we need to add this to reports. Performance, so we've had a look at layers performance within our Geocortex Essentials site. We can look at performance in in terms of our Arcgis servers. And we can see which tools are taking the longest response times. Peak times of a day. It's an important one. What's the busiest time that people are using your services? Might be a good idea to ensure no maintenance work is carried out at those kind of times. Information like that we can easily gather and have at your fingertips. And we can see what errors have been logged, and we can see services downtime as well. As I mentioned, all these panels can be exported to CSV to include in any reports that you may need to do so. But that's essentially the trends tab. I mean, we can have, you can, each resource will have different panels in there with different information, but it's all relevant and pertinent to that particular resource. So we'll have a look at dashboards now. So you might be looking at this information and thinking, that's great, but there's a lot of information, and scrolling through it and trying to find what you're looking for could become a bit laborious. And yeah, to be fair, you'd have a point if you thought that, and that's why dashboards are such a useful tool. So if we just have a look at one of these dashboards as an example, we'll use Analytics Demo. So we can see immediately that the first thing that opens up is our Arcgis server's peak times. So that is obviously something that we're interested in this dashboard. It's the first thing right at the top. CPU time for the server is also an important one. We can see all processes, and we can see how our Geocortex core is performing as well. The list of services associated with that Arcgis server, and any referenced web maps included in there as well. And if we go and have a look at a different dashboard, we can see how different it can look. It really depends how you want to configure it. We'll have a look at Esri dashboard. So we can see it's still loading, but we're looking at peak times again. And this is spread out over the month rather than the week that the previous one was. We're also now looking at users who are accessing our web app builder application. So we can see that the majority, well, they're all anonymous users there, signed in as guests. And then we can see whether they're new users. We can see how many sessions they've run, and we can see the average session duration. We could see what kind of browsers they're using to access the web app builder application. So the majority there are using Chrome. Some are using Edge, some are using Firefox, some are using IE. Do we kind of just assume everyone's using Chrome and only test things on Chrome, or do we spend additional time testing on all the other browsers? If nobody's using other browsers, then we can ascertain that there's no point spending extra time on that. Service usage and performance, that's one we've looked at previously. And we can start to drill down into things like credit usage summary. If we're talking about portal for Arcgis, you can see how many credits we've been using. We can see what portal users have been logging in, how many maps they've been accessing. And we can see the breakdown by user types. Again, portal information can become useful when we're looking at publisher or user. Do you have more publisher licenses than you need. You might only need a bunch of user or viewer licenses, but you're paying extra for publisher users because you assume that you need them, but you can look at statistics to see that you don't necessarily need them. And a list of active alarms for the system as well. So that's another dashboard. So what we need to do to add a dashboard is go to My Dashboards, add new dashboard. I'll just type one spatial into this dashboard. And we will see it on the list there. If I go into it, it'll say there are no panels in this dashboard. That's correct. I've only just created it and I haven't added anything. So I'll go through and add some information to this dashboard. So we'll have a look at Geocortex applications. We'll add some trends. We'll add some information from LA County. Yeah, sessions by visit type, I'll add that. It's a case of clicking on the dashboard icon and selecting the dashboard you wish to add it to. Yeah, and I'll add concurrent sessions. Might be useful information if you're looking at what kind of license types you need. And we will look at tool usage. So I could go through all the different resources that I'm interested in and add panels from there to that dashboard if I wish to do so. But for now, we can go in and have a look at the dashboards that I've added here. And we can see visitor types there, concurrent sessions. But the thing I'm most interested in is tool usage. So I'll just drag that to the top. That's the first thing I want to see. And yeah, concurrent sessions is a bit more important to me than visitor type. And then we can export the dashboards to PDF as well. So we've had a look at how we can export panels to CSV. We can also export our whole dashboard to PDF too. And we can see that that's added as PDF there. And that's essentially our dashboard. So the last thing we'll look at is adding alarms. So to do that, we need to go to configuration. And from there, you need to select the resource that you want to add an alarm against. So each resource that we've been through, there are default alarms that can be added to it. So we could have a look through and see what alarms are added against each resource if we wish to do so. But for now, we'll look at servers and I'll add an alarm against this server. So we go to alarms. We can see there's some alarms set against her already. And once we want to add alarm, we call the alarm whatever we want to call it. I mean, ideally, I guess it would have something to do with the alarm that's being configured. And then we have a list of categories which are pertinent to the resource that you're selecting. So we've got IIS sites, we've got memory, system server processor. And when we select one of them, so we'll go IIS sites, you can select a counter which is relevant to that category. The counter will update as you select each category. So just to demonstrate that, we'll look at logical disk as well. And then we can have a look at percentage of disk time. So in this instance, we can say which disk we're looking for. We're looking at our C drive. and we put maximum percent. So do we want to set an alarm when it's at 70%, 80%, 75%, whichever? We also might want to know, in some instances, when it's a minimum percent as well. We can trigger an alarm if it goes below, say, 10%, something may well be wrong. And as I mentioned previously, the number of occurrences that happens. So if it happens once, it's a one-off. But if it happens twice, then yeah, that's something we need to be concerned about. 3 times, yeah, definitely alert us to that. Scripts to run. So as I mentioned, if a server gets full, maybe you've got a batch script to restart the server. Maybe that might fix it, who knows? But if that is the case, then you can run that script, let the script run, and then you don't need to do anything. Hopefully then that's solved the issue. But that's when you can get really creative and see exactly what you need to do when these alarms are being triggered. And yes, if a bit of time is for thinking about that, we can really kind of tailor some responses to alarms being triggered. And we can email recipients or send text messages to recipients as well. And that's all configured within this configuration area as well. And that's how we would add an alarm. And that really is an overview of Geocortex Analytics. I'll just go back to my PowerPoint presentation. So that's the demo. So, I mean, in summary, Geocortex Analytics allows you to monitor the current health of your GIS system, but also allows you to look at any trends to see how users are actually using your applications, and gives you intelligence to then optimize how your applications are configured. If you want to learn any more about Geocortex Analytics or any other Geocortex products, you can have a look at some of these links. If you are a current Geocortex user, then you'll probably be familiar with the Geocortex Community and Documentation Center, possibly the Developer Center. What you may not know of is the YouTube channel. So on YouTube, if you have a look at Geocortex Tech, then there's a whole bunch of hints and tips videos in there. And also, if you want to have a look at any previous Geocortex webinars that we've created, then they're available from our OneSpatial site. You can see the link there. So it's onespatial.com, news, events and webinars. And then if you're also interested in any Geocortex training, that's available from the link you can see on the screen there too, from our OneSpatial website there. There's a whole host of different training options available. So if there's something you are interested, please do take a look. And that really covers the webinar that I was going to talk to you about. As we've been going through, I've had a couple of questions come through. If you've got any questions now, now's the time to ask. But I've got one question here is, can analytics be used as a SaaS? So no, Geocortex Analytics needs to be installed locally. Well, as you've seen there was multiple servers on the installation. So it doesn't necessarily need to be on the same server. We can cluster servers together and run installations that way, but it does have to be a local installation. And another question is analytics, right, okay, so it's essentially asking if Geocortex Analytics needs to be used in conjunction with other Geocortex products. The answer to that is no. You can use it to monitor your GIS system. You don't necessarily need to use Geocortex Essentials or Geocortex applications either. You could quite easily just use it to monitor your Arcgis servers, your portal for Arcgis, or web app builders as well. Do we have any other questions coming through? No. Okay. Well, if you do have any questions, please feel free to email me on the email address on the screen there. But yeah, thanks very much for coming today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.